Welcome to Tactically Acquired with Campbell Media. Our goal is to document military-connected living history in a fun and easy environment. We will capture the stories of our active duty, Guard, reservists, veterans, ROTC, and their families, sharing their stories, adventures, and journeys across the military life cycle. The podcast is for anyone interested in joining the military, has been a part of the military, or who wishes to learn more about military life. In addition, we want to bridge the growing military-civilian divide through education. This is unfiltered, meaning we will go over the good, the bad, and yes, maybe even the ugly of being a military-connected individual. I'm your host, Rusty Martis, a retired Air Force Mustang and OAF veteran, and I run the Veterans Resource Station at Northern Kentucky University. My special guests today are two Vietnam veterans, one who flew a special aircraft, and the other was on the ground in the front. Both saw heavy action, but we'll get into that just in a minute. First, welcome to the show, and thank you for taking time to share your living histories.
You're welcome.
So with that, let's start with what we call the rapid fire round. Short burst of answers, sort of, just like the air power, you have to have a little flexibility in there. But we'll get over everything that we need to cover today. To get us started, do you mind just starting with your name and branch of service?
My name's Paul Terry, and I was in the Army.
Thank you, Paul.
Don Medley in the Army.
Thank you, gentlemen. And why did you end up choosing that branch? Paul, you want to kick us off?
Well, I was going to college at the time. I quit and went and got a job, and I knew then that the draft, was headed my way, and it wasn't long till I got drafted, and then that's how I got into service, because I wasn't trying to stay in college. I was through with it.
I understand. About what time frame, if you don't mind me asking, was that? What years?
67, somewhere in there like that.
Okay. Don?
Well, I was a senior in '63 when I graduated. And one day in study hall, an Army recruiter came in September, and I knew that if I didn't have any money for college, so as soon as I graduated, guess what? I'm going in the military.
Right.
Because I'm going to be drafted. There was no lottery back then. So the Army recruiter had all these fancy brochures, just wonderful stuff. And back then they had what they called a mimeograph, which is the forerunner of the copy machines. And he had this poorly mimeographed sheet of paper, and it said Warrant Officer Aviator Training or School. And I'd never been in an airplane in my life, but I said, I want to do that. So it took over a year before, with all the testing and physicals and but that's what I ended up doing.
Awesome. And about what time frame was that?
This was 63. It took all the year of 63.
Okay.
And I enlisted April 19th, 1964.
Awesome. And after you joined the military, you both went off the basic training, right? Do you have any memorable experiences that you can think of from that time frame, from basic training?
You talking to me?
Either, yes,
I remember my basic training, and AIT was in Fort Gordon, Georgia.
And AIT being the advanced individual training,
yes.
So that's your job skill, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, and I did learn a lot. I did a lot of KP and a lot of push-ups.
A lot of KP, so a lot of kitchen patrol or kitchen duty, huh?
And push-ups. Every time I turned around, they'd get me for something.
Well, we won't make you do push-ups today, I don't think.
That's good. I'm too old.
You can try.
Don?
Okay. Went to basic at Fort Jackson, South Carolina. And there was the old adage, if they ask for truck drivers, don't volunteer,
Right.
Well, I'd worked on farms, and I had driven truck. So they asked for volunteers to drive a truck. Smartest decision I made in basic, because I never had to march after that.
Oh, really? Was drive trucks everywhere?
I drove truck everywhere.
Well, good to know.
Yeah, yep. And at the end of basic, we had what they called the physical combat proficiency test to see where you were at. And I was number one in our company. I'd played athletics all my life, so I was in good shape when I went in.
Okay. And what advantages did that you received from being number one?
Just, he's number one.
The recognition aspect
There you go.
of it, huh?
There
the
you go.
recognition aspect. So after you left basic training then, and Paul, you mentioned this, you went to AIT. What was that training like, and what did you end up doing? What was your job in the military?
Well, I was in the infantry.
Okay.
Out in the wood jungle most of the time. About 90% of the time that we were out just like that.
And where were you located at for that training?
The main, it's Fort Gordon, Georgia,
Okay.
was where I was at
Okay.
to do all that training.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
And then after you left there,
We went through San Diego. Well, one thing about it, when I went through the line for the physical, the first time they said, that sergeant looked at me and he said, "Do you like to hunt?" I said, "I love to hunt." He said, "Well, get in that line over there." And I said, "Okay." And 11 Bravo.
11 Bravo.
Yeah, I didn't know what it was.
Turned out to be infantry, huh?
Yeah, yeah, and it still is.
And it still is.
Yeah.
Yeah. Don?
Well, after basic, I went to Fort Walters, Texas for pre-flight training, they called it, and that's where the helicopter school was. And I was originally enrolled to go to helicopters. Well, pre-flight was nothing more than ground school and harassment. And the harassment was designed to get you to quit,
Okay.
and a lot of them did. Well, I'd just come out of basic training, I'd had all the harassment, no big deal. So a lot of the older guys, the prior service guys, they hung it up. They said, "Nope, no more." So I'm in helicopter school, and the last week we had a get-together, and they were looking for volunteers to go to fixed wing school. Well, I had made friends with 3 of the guys that had come from the previous class, and they'd been set back a class, so they knew what was going on.
Right.
And they were also prior military brats. So they said, "Set up front." So we sat up front row, 4 of us, and they asked for volunteers to go to fixed wing school. Need 50. Get your hand up.
Right up immediately.
So I ended up at fixed wing school, which is Fort Rucker, Alabama.
Okay.
And once again, being the youngest, it's harassment all over again, and all designed to get you either to keep your head clear or quit.
Okay.
So basically, that was it.
Yeah. When you say quit, though, it wasn't like quit the military. It was just changing jobs, basically.
Yeah. And you had to put down a secondary if you washed out of flight school. Well, I put down special forces.
Okay.
And I was going on to be a Green Beret.
Awesome.
I had all the tests done. And
Like you said, you were an athlete, so.
And after working with the Green Berets, thank God I graduated from flight school.
There you go. So, Paul, after you left your training, I think you said in Georgia.
Yes.
Where'd you end up being stationed?
Well, after that, they sent us home we got about a week or 2 off. I can't remember how long. And then we ended up going to San Diego, and then that's where they shipped us on, the other guys talking about asked me if I like to hunt. He said, "You get to go to Hawaii." I thought, "Oh boy."
Okay.
Well, we stopped in Hawaii all day, and I was in quarantine. You know what I'm saying? All day. I did stand on the ground.
So you
Yeah.
can check that off the box, but you really didn't get to enjoy it as much as you
No.
had to. All right. So you end up going straight from your training over then to Vietnam. Then.
Yes,
Okay.
we went. Yes, that's true.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, Don.
After graduating from flight school in May of '65, I ended up at Fort Knox, Kentucky
Okay.
as a pilot. And if they'd have let me stay there, I'd still be flying out of the airfield there. 'Cause
Okay.
I loved it. I shot my first deer there. So.
Awesome. Awesome.
Go get him.
Something I didn't ask at the beginning, I want to go back and just get clarification on that. Paul, where are you from originally?
I was born in Fontainebleau, France,
Okay.
and my father had married a lady over there after World War II. It was in September 28, 47. And then I came back, I think in 18 months or something. They said, anyway, I ended up in Tennessee.
Okay.
See, in Tennessee, I was living back in the mountains like. And the one thing I think it really helped me, though, I was always out with the animals, and snakes, and everything, and it was kind of, at least you were getting used to being out in a odd, strange place. You wasn't on a street, you know what I'm saying?
Right.
But I think that helped me because you learn how to, any kind of animal or ever what you're hunting for, this, you learn how to do this and how to do that to make it work. Then when I got there, I caught on to that pretty fast. You got to know your enemy as much as possible.
Absolutely. So when you left for the military, you were living in Tennessee then?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And Don?
I'm from extreme northwest Ohio.
Okay.
About a half mile from the Michigan line, 20 miles west of Toledo. Small farm town, like I said, about 600 people. And whenever I could, after 10 years old, I'd grab the shotgun during pheasant season. And all I had to do was walk out the back door and I was in a cornfield.
good.
So
That's what we get them.
the only problem was I wasn't supposed to be taking that shotgun out at 10 years old.
Absolutely.
So
Yeah.
one day I got a rabbit and I had to explain to my dad where the rabbit came from, and that was an interesting conversation.
Well, it's interesting that you both mentioned that you were both hunters.
Yes.
So you're very familiar with, guns and ammunition and everything at a very young age.
And even back then, you didn't think about it, but we learned about safety.
Absolutely.
You know, on that, because I've seen some things. We even went through the training of safety, but still accidents would happen that you would just, and then I still today, if I get around people, a turkey shoot or anything, I'm kind of, I got to keep my eyes open. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
It's just the way it is.
Yep.
Well, when I was a senior, we actually had a hunter safety course in high school.
Yeah, me too.
Okay.
And safe gun handling was taught the whole 9 yards. Now it's unheard of, I'm sure.
Right. Well, I appreciate you getting in kind of to that rapid fire round. We're going to step it up just a little bit. We'll do what we call soup sandwich time. Now, if you're part of the military, you understand what soup sandwich is, but it's basically you start with the good, go with the bad, and end with some good. Well, we'll see where it goes. We might go good, bad, and ugly. We'll figure it out later.
Okay.
But what are some of the things that you kind of really miss about your service time?
Really, I guess the worst thing or the biggest thing that bothered me, it was after I left my platoon. I would get up in the morning and I'd be worried about them and want to know what they was doing and everything, and that seemed like that. And that seemed to me like was my biggest issue, was just knowing how they were doing and this and that on their missions.
Gotcha. Is that when you came back to the United
Yeah,
States?
it's after I came home.
I understand.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Because when I come home, I just felt, I don't know what you would call it, you felt you was in the wrong place or just something was missing. You know, it took me a long time to get over that, kind of.
Yeah, that transition from, especially during your time frame, where we'll talk a little about combat activity that you were actually engaged in, and then just the total change from being back in the United States.
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, for me, I miss the comradeship of the fellow pilots. We were all very close. And just, you knew what you were going to be doing every day. You had that structure, and it never changed.
Right.
And I miss that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. What are some of the things that might have been that you're kind of just glad that's over with, that you got out of the service, that you left behind?
When I came back, see, I ended up at Fort Hood, Texas.
Okay.
And there, they wanted me to more or less, they were going to give me another grade, you know what I mean? I was an E5 and they was going to give me E6, but that was kind of good for me, but I don't know what it is. I didn't want to go, I wanted to come back home and do this and that.
Right.
And then times I look back and say I'd have retired a long time ago if I'd have stayed.
Yeah. Yeah, it's hard to make that decision right there, right now.
It's just like
especially
you
when we're
said, it takes time.
It does. It does. Yeah. Don?
Well, I got orders for Vietnam in December of '65. And before I went to Vietnam, I had to go to Fort Ord, California to transition into another aircraft. And I don't know if you've ever been to Fort Ord, California. It's one of the most beautiful places in the world. It's on Monterey Bay. And I loved it there. So I had to put in a request after my tour of duty in Vietnam of where I wanted to go next. And I said, well, I want to be a flight instructor at Fort Ord, California.
Right.
Well, they got half of it right. I ended up as a flight instructor at Fort Rucker, Alabama.
Okay.
Which was very bad.
Yeah.
All right, we had kind of talked a little bit and kind of jumped around just a bit when we talk about your Vietnam time, but if you're okay with it, I'd like to jump back into that and talk a little about first your arrival into country and what was that like? Paul, you come from Tennessee, and Don, you come from Ohio. I personally have never been to Vietnam, but I'm guessing it's not the same experience, especially during a combat time.
Yeah.
Paul, do you mind kicking us off and talk a little about that?
After we left Hawaii, we stopped at Wake Island, and I think we were there maybe 2 hours or something. And I remember walking down to the bunkers and stuff. And when then we finally got to Vietnam, it was real late in the evening, and when we stepped down off of that plane, it was so dark and black, and it was just like you were in a steam bath. I mean, it got like that on you. And then...
What time frame was that? What month around time frame?
Let's see, November. Probably November.
Okay.
I can't remember exact the dates on that, but I think it was November or something.
So our winter, getting into our winter time.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yes. And they also, that was beginning of the dry season when we got there. Because I remember when we got there, the rice paddies were dried up and stuff. That was a different situation.
Gotcha.
See?
Yeah. Don?
I arrived in Saigon the end of March 1966. And like Paul said, he'd step off that air-conditioned airplane. What in the hell did you get yourself into, son?
Okay, let me stop you right there because your experience might be a little bit different than mine. Again, I've never been to Vietnam, but I've traveled overseas and everything. What did you fly in? Was it the Freedom Birds over there?
No, I went over on a C-141.
Okay, so you went on a C-141.
Which was the most uncomfortable chairs ever.
And as soon as you said air conditioner, I was like, okay. But you were on jump seats the entire time too.
Yep.
Packed full of heroes, I'm assuming?
Yep.
Okay.
So we get off the plane and then we go check in, and like Paul said, the heat and the humidity was just oppressive. I mean, it was unbelievable. You did get used to it after a while, but wow.
Yeah.
First off the plane, whew.
It was terrible, huh?
Exactly.
Yeah. So, Paul, when you got in country and you went through this oppressed heat, as you put it, and everything, how long did it take you to kind of get assimilated to the country? And when did you start actually going out and doing missions? And what were those missions?
Okay, when we were first there years ago, when you got to Vietnam, you got off the main plane, or was it? They flew you out into the field, see, and you didn't have no time enough. Said a lot of those guys got wiped out the first day they got there. Well, then when I was there, they give us a whole week in Cu Chi was where I was at, and we went to classes and training. I went to combat training and all that, and we did that, and that kind of familiarized with the weather and different things, see, and like that.
Now, when you flew over there, were you with your unit or your?
No.
Okay.
But there was a plane full of people from everywhere. Because when we got to San Diego, you know, they just couldn't tell them where they all come from.
Okay.
But
did they assign you to a unit in San Diego or Hawaii, or just when you got there, they're like, you're going there, you're going there?
Whatever how they did it. When we got there the next day, they took me, which everybody was going just like this. You had people coming and going, leaving on the planes, and then it was just like this. And that's when they loaded me up, I think, in a helicopter, and I can't remember, or one of them trucks. And they took me to Chuhoi. I mean, what did I said my place was, or where we was at? Cu Chi. And
Sure.
that's where they got us settled in.
No, you're good.
When I was settled in a little bit, then they took, and that's where they give us our pack, our clothes, our military, our M16 and all of that. Well, then after we left there, see, that was just like a town to me. That's how big it was. It was huge. Well, they left then. They put me on a helicopter and flew me to a first port base was named Pershing. That's the first one I was ever at, but it was named after a general or somebody, Pershing. And they flew me there, and quick as I got there, I stepped off of that. Well, they put me on another helicopter to take me out on my first mission. See, here I am. And then I went on that. So do you want me to get into the mission?
Sure.
Or-
You want to
Okay.
share? Now,
What
how
they
old
done?
were you at that time, if you don't mind me
Probably
asking?
18 or 19.
18, so, okay. You're right.
Anyway, they flew us out, and plus I'm new. And I'm watching my sergeant. He was the one trying to help me and do this and that. And we went away, flew us out, but then we had to walk back in to the fire support base. Well, what they did, they were kind of lined up like this, you know, spread out 5 or 10 foot apart. You know, that was because of different things. And anyway, they let me frag a couple old wells. That gave me a little something to get what was going on. I'd throw grenades down a well or something. And we started out there, and then you could see the fire support base and the flags. They had from Tennessee, Southern, everybody had a flag.
Okay.
And everybody was wanting to get up there so they get that good cold beer. You know, you could get one every once in a while. And as we started up through there like this, all of a sudden up there, just all hell broke loose. All of a sudden, a big boom. I mean, a real big boom. And I looked, I happened to standing there, I looked and I seen 2 people go up in the air and they come down like that. All right, and the sergeant looked at me and he said, "Terry, get down now, Terry." Because you've never seen that like that before in your life.
Right.
But what it was, and then they flew a helicopter in and they put it in them plastic bags and hauled them off. Well, see, the thing is, where the problem was, they told us, when you're walking on a rice paddy, especially if they're dry, see, the enemy would get those, what it is, they would shoot a 105 round out and they'd forget to take the safety out. See, well, within the enemy could get that, they take our smoke grenade, screw the nose, or that smoke grenade fuse that go in there, it'll go off in less than a second, where a grenade's 4 seconds, you can go a long ways in 4 seconds. But see, when you trip that on a wire, see, it's gone. And
just
105 is a lot of scrap.
Yeah.
And everything. But anyway, what you did, they told you, said when you come to a dike, you take 1 step on to the top, 1 step off. And what happened, there was like 6 or 8 people that already went through with a guy carrying the gun. You know, it's a little weight, and he's tarred and everything. He got there, and I don't know if he got it on his way up or when he went down, and that's what it was about.
Oh, wow.
And that's your first day.
Yep.
And right then, you know that you're going to have to change everything, and now you see what they was training you for.
Right.
You mentally, that's the biggest thing. It was to get you to where you could, like he was talking about,
Yeah.
to get you to do that.
Yeah. Well, thank
And-
you for sharing that story. I appreciate
Well,
it. Yeah.
I got a bunch of them.
I get there. Yeah. Don?
Yeah, after I was checked in and I was given an assignment to the 220th Reconnaissance Airplane Company, which flew bird dogs. And
Explain a bird dog.
a bird dog is a 2-seat Cessna. The observer sits in the back behind you. That has a Continental 0470 engine, 213 horsepower. I mean, it's a powerful little airplane. But it's one of the hardest airplanes to land because it has a very short wheelbase and it's conventional, so you got a tail wheel. And I was told in flight school there's 2 kinds of pilots. Those that have ground looped a bird dog and those that are going to. So,
It's going to happen.
see, it's going to happen. I did a half and I didn't damage the aircraft when it happened, so I got lucky. Well, anyways, I go to Wei Fubai, which was the company headquarters, and further assignment to Da Nang Marble Mountain. And that was actually a Marine base. And the 220th was an Army unit, but we are under direct control of the Marine Corps. And that proved to be very beneficial later. I won't go into that right this moment.
Okay.
So I have an orientation flight with my platoon leader, who was Captain Chancellor. Well, he was also one of my flight instructors in flight school, so we knew each other.
Right.
And he was one of the guys that liked warrant officers. He was a captain. There was a lot of officers that, warrant officers are just basically overtrained privates. Anyway, Captain Chancellor takes me up for an orientation ride. Well, I hadn't flown a bird dog since I left Fort Knox.
Right.
I've been flying otters. He said, well, we're going to fire a couple rockets. Well, the switches are up here, and there's 6 switches. and got rocket tubes on each wing, 2 rockets. So I armed the switches to fire the rockets, I thought. I pressed the trigger, and both rocket tubes go whew, fall off the airplane. And that was, I got a little ribbon off of that one. Then anyway, we landed, and then a couple days later, after my orientation flight, we're going to, I'm assigned a flight to the Ashow Valley. Now, I don't know if you've seen the movie Hamburger Hill. That was the Ashow Valley. And whoever decided that was a good mission was setting its eye gun. Anyway, this is a 2-ship mission. It's the only mission we fly 2 ships in. And the reason for the 2 ships is the low ship, if it gets shot down, the high ship's there to call help. That's how dangerous that area was.
Right.
Well, I meet my observer.
What was the kind of the average height that you were flying at when you were doing that type of mission? 'Cause you said you had a high observer. Who's the low one? Is it capable for RPGs and stuff like that, I guess is?
Oh, anything, a
Anything
slingshot,
it's
basically.
It's not very high, right? Okay. Yeah.
Well, so I meet my observer, and it's a sergeant first class, green beret, and we're going out to inspect the Ashow, the last camp that the Green Berets had there. It had fallen 2 weeks before. The sergeant I'm flying had been wounded and escaped and evaded and got away safely. And our mission was to go in and see the American bodies, see where they were located so they could be recovered.
Gotcha.
Welcome to Vietnam, kid.
Right.
You know?
And how old were you, if you don't mind me asking, at that time?
I was just 3 weeks short of my 21st birthday.
Okay. Okay.
So we get that done.
So seeing a lot in a hurry
Oh.
at a young age.
Oh boy. Yeah, I grew up that day, basically.
Right.
And we did find some bodies, and it was an uneventful operation.
But somebody had to do it.
Yep.
Yep. Takes a man to do that.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
You're trained.
But it was eye-opening.
Yeah. Yeah. So, Paul, how long did you end up staying in Vietnam?
I think it was 11 months
Okay.
or something like that. It was pretty close in there. It wasn't a full year because I remember they were cutting back a lot of, and like the 25th Infantry, they were getting a lot of other battalions of different people were moving down because they were breaking up and moving or something. So we was ended up getting people from airborne, everybody, a big red one, and just different people would come in, you know.
Right.
You know.
Yeah. And Don, how long were you end up being in Vietnam then?
Exactly a year.
Exactly a year.
Yeah.
And this is, we're talking, the reason I asked that is because we're talking, this is your first week, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or first couple of days
First couple
into
days.
it. Did it slow down in between that first week or first couple of days?
Not for me.
Never stopped, right?
We flew 7 days a week.
Okay.
2 missions a day, 6 days, and you got a half day to go get your hair cut and shine your boots, basically.
Gotcha.
Seems like that the way we were, like you would, like we always did a lot down where we were at in the rice paddies. We were doing all of our ambushes of a nighttime see. Well, later, then we moved up into the jungle. They were blowing ambushes on us. See, that was the difference in it, like that. And they'd send us out on different missions and different places. And then me, though, the night ones, when we'd go out and set up, you'd always get down in behind dikes. You get behind them in case they come through. But what was sadder or scary looking is they would come on another 2 or 3 docks over, and they was too many to blow ambush on, because most of the time we were just a platoon.
A platoon being about how many folks? About 12 to 15?
Gosh. Oh, a lot of more than that.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, the platoon?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Yep.
Yeah, but I remember times that they would just seem like they kept coming through, and you had to just not make no kind of racket and a noise. And then on moonshining nights, you didn't have a chance then, because they could see you and you could see them. Yeah. But they'd go through from one spot to the other, and I mean, we'd see them all the time.
So were you doing missions basically every day then, or pretty much
Almost
every day?
every day, and what the point I was trying to get to earlier, anytime you got into slack, seems like everything was getting, you know, kind of slacking off a little bit, that's when something happened.
Right.
Yeah, yeah. I can tell you another one here if you want me to.
Yeah, please.
Well, December the 10th, that we went out to a mission and we'd found this grass hut, and they knew there was an enemy in there, and they took a dog with us. All right, they went in out there, and that dog went over and went under a brush pile. Well, there was an enemy that was in there, but he was wounded. And you remember I talking about the old boy from Talk was our man from over there that was with us. He wanted to get in there and get after him, but they wouldn't let him because they'd let that dog get right up in that guy's face, man, right like this. And he started talking, and he told them that they're coming home tonight. So what we did, what they did, they had a fake PZ or pickup zone. What they done anyway, they flew up, setting up in a helicopter, and when they got ready to leave, they laid down, and it made it look like, no, wait a minute, they come in laying down, and then what they done, they set up like they were leaving, but we were still there. See, that was the plan.
Okay.
Well, we set up in a row of banana trees, because, well, I got it kind of here. There was a row went here, the house was here, and then there was a short row on this end. Well, we put all of our people out here. The 60 was out this way. I was on this corner, and my other ammo bearer was here on this corner.
60 being a machine gun?
Yes,
or,
yes.
Yeah.
And then the main trail, though, and we knew that's the reason they set everybody up here, the main trail went this way. Well, for some reason or another, here I am sitting right here. They come in this way.
They came in kind of behind
They come
you.
in, well, almost right straight at me,
Okay.
but it was from an angle. And what happened, I'm here, and I done got my M60 on safety, off safety, or 16. And the guy next to me, I knew he'd been there a lot longer than me. There was two rows of them, but they was kind of like this. And I thought to myself mentally, I said, when he fires, I'll fire. And when he fired, I fired, and it almost fell on top of me.
Oh.
That's how close it was.
Wow.
I mean, now see, what are you going to do?
Right.
If I hadn't have fired, I'd still been laying over there.
Right. I understand.
But that's, I mean, but you got to live with that
Yeah.
from now on.
Absolutely.
I had a psychologist told me, he said, he said, tell me the worst thing that happened to you. And I told him, he said, well, I don't want to hear that. I said, why don't you fellas that does all that just forget all that stuff? I thought, well, if I could do that, I'd have your job.
Yeah.
Right.
It's going to be with you, but you got to learn to live with it.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely. And
And respect all the other people. Look what, gosh.
right, right. And that's why it's so important, I think, to share your stories and document these living histories, is because, you know, less than 1% of America ever served, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, you know, World War II was a large percentage of Americans served, and they're starting to pass away. They're starting to get older.
Yeah.
And so the documentation of these living histories are so important to share everything that happens and help people understand it a little better. Maybe it's that psychiatrist or just, you know, everybody that's in there or anybody that's watching the show right now. So, Don, do you mind sharing a story?
Yes, this one is actually, there's a magazine article about it, and it's Vietnam Magazine, April 2016 edition, and the cover story is The Lost Patrol. I'm mentioned in the story not by name, but as an aerial observer and what I did. Well, there's a backstory there that only I know about.
All right.
We were supposed to take off at about 0700. We do our pre-flight briefing, and Captain Chancellor introduces me to this Arvin lieutenant, which is a Vietnamese Army lieutenant.
Okay.
And I'd never flown with him before. He was going to be my observer. And he got my assigned area, got my map out, been there before. And I loaded the Arvin in the back seat of the aircraft, and Captain Chancellor comes out to me and he pulls me aside and he says, "This guy is a coward. If you have any kind of action at all, he's going to take a hat, put his finger down his throat, get sick, and say, we got to go back because I'm sick." That was good information to have. I didn't think anything of it at the time.
Right.
So we go out into our assigned area. We've been flying for about 2 hours, and really nothing to speak of. And I happened to notice over a large village that there was heavy black smoke coming up. Curiosity kills the cat, so I got to go check that out.
Right.
Well, I go over, and as I go over the village, I see a Marine patrol walking between 2 tree lines towards another tree line. And I'm thinking, if I was going to set up an ambush, this would be a perfect spot for it. And the patrol was 13 men. So I figured, well, I'll go fly out ahead of them and see what's there. I flew out about 400 yards ahead of them, and there was a tree line. And then beyond the tree line 100 yards, there was a trench line coming out of the village, and they were walking right towards this trench line. I'm flying at about 900 feet. I look in the trench line, and damned if there isn't a bush growing every 2 feet down the middle of that trench line. I said, this doesn't look right.
Right.
So I flew out a ways, and I went down on the deck, about 10 feet altitude, and I flew the length of the trench.
10 feet, like where Michael Jordan dunks.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
And I'm looking in the trench as I'm flying, and every bush had a set of eyeballs watching me go by. So I said, well, I don't have radio contact with the patrol. And normally they would have one of us flying cover for them. So somebody dropped the ball. So I get back to altitude, and I look in the rearview mirror, and I see my Vietnamese friend. He's got his hat right here, and his finger's starting to go there. So I pulled out my .45, and I said, if you get sick, I'll shoot you. Whether I would have or not, I don't know, but I got Marines on the ground in trouble.
Trouble, right.
So that ended that. The hat went down, and we never heard a word from him again. So now I got to figure out how to contact Marines. So God was with me that day, that's all I can tell you. I had smoke grenades, and they were olive drab. So I took grease pencil, and I wrote 10 to 20 VC in trench. And I made a low, slow flight over the patrol, and I dropped the grenade. Didn't pull the pin, just dropped the grenade.
Yeah.
So I saw them pick it up, and they kept on walking towards the ambush. So I wrote on a second grenade, I'm calling artillery. That got their attention.
Right.
And I dropped it, and they scattered into the trench line, and then I did call an artillery mission. Well, after the artillery mission was over, they had organized an avenue of attack to the trench line, and it ended up they had 175 killed body count in that operation. But the one thing that happened, a normal bird dog carries 42 gallons of gas. It burns a little over 10 gallons an hour at regular flying. In combat flying, you're not worried about gas consumption.
Right.
When I landed back at Marble Mountain, I'd been flying exactly 4 hours, which I should have been out of gas already.
Right on the border, right? Yeah.
The crew chiefs filled up the plane, and I went back out for my second mission. They said, you took 32 gallons of gas. I still had 10 gallons of gas left. I don't know how. I could never duplicate it again.
Wow.
So somebody was watching me, I guess.
Yeah, yeah. Well, thank you very much for sharing that.
That's
Appreciate
just one of them. There's,
Right.
there's a ton of them. That was not the safest job in the world.
Absolutely. Well, I think you had mentioned, and this probably was off camera, there were a lot of bird dog pilots that didn't make it back.
Oh, good. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, because of the type of mission that you were accomplishing and how often you were accomplishing those missions.
I have one of the books I have is called The Bird Dog's Tale, and the author has taken each bird dog unit and listed the casualties and the aircraft lost by tail number. It's really eye-opening.
Yeah.
Tell him about your plane.
Oh, well, we'll get there.
Oh, okay. That was a good part.
And I was decorated by the Marine Corps for my operation. And that story doesn't end there. In December of 2016, I get an email from Scott Cummings, who administers the 220th Aviation Company website. It said, the Marines are looking for a pilot who on May 12, 1966, saved a patrol from walking into an ambush.
Wow.
I sent back an email. I said, that was me. Well, I get a return email, and he says, no, your action happened on June 13th, 1966. Well, I had one there too, and we'll get into that.
Yeah.
So I sent him a copy of my citation that I was awarded. And then I get a phone call in December, and it's Earl Davis, Sergeant Major in the Marine Corps, and he was the one leading the patrol.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Sorry, I get a little emotional.
It's okay. I appreciate you sharing.
He said on May 12th, we're going to be in Elizabethtown, and we want to have dinner with you.
Wow.
I said, yeah, great. So May 12th comes, and I didn't realize the date, but it was the 51st anniversary of saving their butts.
Wow.
And I think I'm just going to meet with Earl and his wife. Well, there was 3 other members of the platoon with their wives.
That is amazing.
It was emotional.
Yeah, I bet. And you talk about adapting and overcoming. You're using smoke grenades, the ride-on, to send messages down.
Yeah, yeah. Like I said, the good Lord was riding with me. That's all I can tell you.
Wow, that's awesome.
But to have 10 gallons of gas left.
Right.
I mean, because I was full bore a lot of the times, climbing and evading. And on my citation, it mentioned that I was under intense ground fire when I was doing all this. If the bullet's close,
Well, you can look up and see. You're right there.
Yeah.
well,
We're
if the
down
bullet's
here,
close,
there's a
you
fire
can hear
out
it
in
go
the open.
by.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm 6 foot tall. I can almost jump up and touch your plane.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, this was when I was at altitude.
Okay.
And like I say, when a bullet's close, you can hear it go by. It
Right.
makes a sharp crack. And a bird dog with a loud engine, and you hear that crack, it's close, baby. Oh, but I never heard anything. But I think the adrenaline was pumping about then, and
Absolutely.
everything. The only thing I had in my mind was saving the Marines,
That's awesome.
basically.
Right. That's awesome. Yeah. Paul, did you have another story you wanted to
I
share?
sure have.
What do you have for us, sir?
We'd get some popcorn, we'd be in good shape.
That's okay. That's,
Well, this is,
we'll warn the audience now. Grab some popcorn.
this was, we always got paid on the end of the month, and this was March the 31st, and we were just back, you know, we wasn't out doing anything that day for some means or another. Normally we were, and they come in and said, well, you're going to have to go out on a little short mission. It's real close. And we hated, here we got all that stuff, I call it saddling up, like you do a mule or something. And we get all saddled up and get ready to go, and here we go. We go out, didn't go very far at all. And we go in, and I was carrying a 60 at that time. This was after I'd started carrying a 60. And when we first got in this woods, this trail was more like, a trail. It was more slick. But what they do, you don't take the gun up front as you go in, because you put your gun back, because if you go up front and get knocked out, you lost your gun power.
Right.
All right, what we done, them boys had went up and got up there, and all of a sudden they walked right smack into an ambush. And the stuff was flying everywhere. And the lieutenant hollered and said, bring the gun up, bring the gun up. And I looked at my 2 ammo bearers, my buddies, and I hollered back, I said, I'm going to be shooting over your head, because I thought I raised up enough because I knew about where they was at. But I did that because when I did that, they quit shooting. But like you said, before we started up through there, the leaves was falling off of them trees right where we was at. And like he was talking about them cracking, when they go around across your head, they crack.
Right.
And anyway, I go up there, and usually there's a log, there's a rock, there's nothing. It's slick. They picked a perfect spot where they had bombed it or something before we had. It was slick, just like that.
Right.
Here I am, I go up there, here I am. So I went down on my knees with the 60, and I started mowing grass. That's what I always call it, because you can't see them most of the time, because they're dug in. And I kept going back and forth and doing this, and the lieutenant finally hollered, and he said, cease fire, cease fire. And when I pulled my finger off that trigger, I looked, and here come a grenade out of the bamboo. It made you think in slow motion, and it was real quiet. Everybody was, here a grenade comes out like that. It comes up under my 60 machine gun. Now, think how close. It's supposed to kill you within a 10-foot radius.
Right.
It blows me backwards like this, which I guess the gun was still sitting there, but it blowed me backwards, and something told me it's time to get out of Dodge. Well, I turned around and just wasn't even up yet, and another one hit behind me. So I got 2 grenades in one day. I wasn't asking for them.
Right.
But what they done, see, when they did that, but they knocked that gun out, but perfectly, they should have killed us, all, or 3 of us. But one ammo bearer, he got wounded real bad. And the other one, his M16, you know how you fold it down right at the where it's hinged? It broke it in 2. He was standing there with 2 pieces.
Wow.
And me, I learned something the hard way. If I was ever in the military again and was carrying a 60, I'd have a 45 or something. I didn't have nothing.
Yeah,
See,
once they wiped it out, it was over.
That was the bad part, because you know, there's something, your adrenaline goes crazy. I took off running up there toward that place, and the guy tackled me and said, "Get back down here." I was just, you go haywire.
Right.
But you'll do that, and then after that, you lose all that. You know. But then there was a bunch of us, the point men got wiped completely out, and I don't know how many more. And they flew us all, the wounded. I got wounded too. And plus too, being that close, it really, like your head, it was just like, you know, just like putting you in a barrel with a hand grenade in it, you know. But it was pretty, and it didn't bother me till that night. We went up to a place, and they put us, after we went through everything, put me in a place to stay all night. And then I started thinking about that stuff.
Right. Well, you know, in today's world, we call that TBI or PTSD,
Yeah,
brain
well,
injury, post-traumatic. But back then, you know, shell shock maybe. But
well, that's you know, in World War II, how they used to talk about that all the time, so many of them. But that was probably, it being that close, the concussions should have the gun saved me.
Right.
That gun underneath it, I don't know what all, because they left and took it. And my helmet, I didn't have it strapped like you're supposed to. And they was trying to find my helmet, and we never did find it because we was getting on the helicopter. It got under here and blowed it somewhere.
Wow.
Had my girlfriend's names on it and stuff.
Girlfriends?
Well, them enemy over there's probably wearing it right now. Trophy.
Do you happen to remember how many days or roughly how long you were in country when that experience occurred?
Well, see, that was March the 31st,
Okay.
and I got in, I think, about November, let's see, 69, I think, right at the last, because I remember when I first come in, we were still in the rear at Coochie, and we had Thanksgiving. Okay. And after that's when that's when we went out. So you're talking about that. And then after that, there was a lot of little issues here and there, and you don't supposed to talk about, I guess I still am, about Cambodia. Okay. We went to Cambodia, and Kontum, I told you about that. You said you might know where it's at. It was a place we met where we were at, and they had bombed this place the night before, and when we went in there, and I loved riding with helicopters, I loved them, and when we were headed to get up there, I looked and the whole sky was full of helicopters, huge, just everywhere. And it was just amazing, which I took pictures of all of them. Right. You know, and stuff. Yeah. But when we got up there, I guess that next morning or what it was, different companies, different people and everything was going in and doing their part here and there. Well, see, and it was a place where they had a hospital, but it was all underground, all that stuff was. And then we found places where they had rice piled up that was just under that grass roof thing. I mean, they took it all. They brought a big thing in, a ship, that big thing, and they loaded all of it and took it all down south for the people. Well, what our company was doing, we were going through in different places, and then you'd come to a bunker that was still alive, because quick as you got close or something, you'd hear it crack. Right. Well, then you didn't have much choice but to get somebody to go around this way or this way and drop a grenade in there. Wow. But that did happen, and then sometimes you could shoot with that RPG not RPG, but what is that shotgun thing you're talking about?
M79.
Yeah, M79. You could take that and pop one of them in there, and it'd do just as good.
Wow.
But that happened all day long, and I've seen a lot of people. They'd come out because they was wounded, waiting on a plane and all this. But it was just everywhere. Pop here, pop there. Everybody was into something.
Well, after you had those 2 grenades go off right on you, basically, did you get any downtime? Did you get to leave Vietnam at that period of time?
No,
I'm guessing not, since you said 11 months you were there. So
this it was like he was talking about. The good Lord was watching over me. I always figured out he wanted me to had something else for me to do, but I never did figure it out.
Okay.
But you get to thinking about it. If it hadn't been for that gun, he'd have tore us. We'd have been meat. That's all there was to it.
Absolutely.
All 3 of us.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that's close.
That is, can't get much closer than that, that's for sure.
No.
Yeah.
No, yeah.
Don, I see that you have a medal on your hat.
Distinguished Flying Cross.
Okay, can you share a little bit about how you earned that or what that entails to get that?
Yes. It was June 13th, 1966, and I have a Marine major who was going to be my observer for the day, Major Hamill. Really nice guy. And we're going to go cover a Marine push. And actually, we're going to check out Artillery Hill 5-5. It was a Marine base, but it was out in the middle of nowhere. Mm-hmm. That was our first deal. Before we got there, we took off about 0700. Before we got to Hill 5-5, we got a radio call. Our call sign was Cat Killer. And the radio call was any cat killer, any cat killer. So I answered, and it was a Marine push, about a full company that was pinned down by Vietnamese or VC fire. And they were only 5 minutes flying time away from us. I said, well, we'll go, we got it. So we arrive on the scene. The Marines are laying on a road, a very narrow road. And I'm flying over, and the VC are in a trench line about 100 yards away from them, about a dozen of them. And scoped the situation out. And I said, we got a mortar? So I had the Marines set up their mortar. Well, they must have put the base plate on sand, because every time I get around and give them an adjustment, it wasn't anywhere close. So I said, Major, take my M16, we're gonna make some strafing runs. So he did. He started shooting out the back window. And that broke up the attack. Well, I climbed out after the last strafing run, and I'm turning, and the VC had run into a forested area, jungle area, that had a clearing about 30 feet in diameter, and all the VC were gathered together, getting their stuff together to make another attack. Mm-hmm. So I armed a rocket, lined it up, punched the rocket off, and it was flying true. I put the power to go get away, and all of a sudden there was silence when I pushed the throttle forward. And I get a radio call, Cat Killer, have you been hit? You're trailing flames and heavy black smoke. So this is not going to end well. Thank God the training kicked in. I went through the emergency restart procedures, nothing. So I told Major Hamill, I said, get on the radio, put out a mayday with the coordinates. And then I went through the engine shutdown, aircraft shutdown. And I just had the right altitude that I could make an approach to where the Marines were on the road. Everything's looking great. I'm on short final, about 100 feet in the air. I'm going to clear the tree line just barely, and I'm going to land on the road. Only problem is the Marines haven't left the road yet. So I yelled to the Major, I said, we're going to hit hard. And this is where another good Lord was looking out after me. There's a newspaper called Stars and Stripes. Mm-hmm. Everybody in the military is familiar with it. Mm-hmm. About a week before that, there was an article in Stars and Stripes about a bird dog. His aircraft was on fire, tried to make a normal landing in a rice paddy. The aircraft flipped upside down, the gas tanks leaked, he burned to death.
Oh, wow.
Before he could get out of it. Yeah. This is just a week before mine.
Right.
On the way down, guess what came into my mind? So I told the major, I says, make sure you're locked in, we're going to hit hard. And my intention was to break the gear off and slide. If I flared too soon, we're going to go in nose first, we're dead. If I flare too late, we're just going to bounce in the air, upside down, we're dead. So it was perfect. The gear was sheared. We slid maybe 40 feet up into a Vietnamese graveyard, and the nose of the aircraft was against the grave.
Wow.
Well, now we're off about this high off the ground because the gear is gone. I've got flames coming up into my face. I can't reach the emergency door release handle because of the flames. And the door is two pieces. Plexiglass window goes up, attaches to the wing, and then you have the aluminum door. Well, I went through the aluminum door. Adrenaline had kicked in big time. And I looked back, I said, come on, Major. I mean, right now the flames are getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And he's all tangled up. Now, he's about 180 pounds, and I was probably maybe 150, soaking wet at the time. I grabbed him right here, and I actually jerked him out of the aircraft with one hand.
Wow.
And I said, well, let's go. So we ran back to where the Marines were. We get to the road, it was about 75 yards. And the second lieutenant, who's the platoon leader, comes up to me. I said, Lieutenant, why didn't you get your people off the road so I could save my airplane? He says, oh, both sides of the road are mined. We've had several casualties. So we just run through a minefield. Oh, it's not over. So about 15 minutes later, Huey comes in and picks us up. And we go back to the flight surgeon at Marble Mountain, go for a checkup. And he checks us out. We're all healthy, no problem. Thank you, Lord. And so we get 2 bottles, airline bottles of 50 milliliter bottles of brandy in a paper cup. I get the first top off, and then the adrenaline starts wearing off. My hands start shaking so bad with the paper cup, I just threw the cup away, and I drank both of them with both hands. So this is about 8:30 in the morning. Everything's going quick. So I go back to my quarters, I take a shower, put civilian clothes on, and the officers club opens at 9 o'clock. So I walk in the door. The only one in there besides me is a bartender. So rum and cokes are 15 cents. So I grab a rum and coke, and I sit down at a nickel slot machine, and I start playing a slot machine. I don't have the drink half drunk, and I hit the big jackpot for over $300. Don't ask me what happened the rest of the day. I have no clue.
Did you wake up with $300 in your pocket or no?
I have no, the next day, it's an automatic 3 days off when you crash.
Okay. Yep.
The next day, I'm trying to get
3 days off after that. Okay.
I'm trying to get out of bed, and my body is one big bruise. Because we stopped in maybe 50, 60 feet from 50 mile an hour.
Right.
And it was to the bathroom and back in bed until the next day, basically. And then the third day I was back flying.
Oh, wow. Wow. That's amazing.
Just,
yeah, thank you for sharing all that so much. It's crazy. So, Paul, did you have any medals that you remember while you were over there?
I got, I think, Army Accommodation medals. I think I got 3 of them. I got 3 Bronze Stars, and I got a Purple Heart, and a bunch of other stuff. I don't know. I don't know if you ever wanted to read them, but I thought you did earlier. But you did probably a long time ago. But there was quite a bit of things in there but each one of them was actually a situation that happened.
Right.
Like 2 of them was, but and then like you was talking about after I got wounded, I remember kindly that they kept us back. They put them right back out in the field as soon as possible. They bandaged you up and done what they had to do, and then quick as you get straightened out, if you were able, you went right back. See.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you both for going through and sharing all your wonderful stories, and we got a lot more that we can delve into. You brought some things with you today. Do you mind sharing a little bit about some of the things you brought with you? Paul, did you want to kick us off?
Were you talking about my,
Yeah.
how they would?
Yeah.
Well, let me go here. Anyway, like on the air medals, I ended up getting 5. I think it's every 20-hour combat mission.
25 hour.
Well, ever what it is.
Direct
but
combat.
They told,
Wow.
is this, yeah, combat missions. So I ended up with 5 of the, of the medals and stuff.
Within 11 months.
Yes, yes. But boy, that when I got on, the only thing that that was kind of a little leery is, if you were the first helicopter to go in, and and you're in a strange place, and then when you were the last one to go out, and it was a little while before they could get to you, even if it was real late in the evening, you get that feeling, you finally get behind a stump or something, tried to. It's just that way, you had
Right.
that feeling. But the accommodation medals, they were more or less a lot of things you did. When I remember one time when we was in Cambodia, we'd blow the ambush, me and them 2 ammo guys, and then we went around. They wanted us to come down here. The sergeant did, and they wanted somebody to go up and check the area out and everything like that. So they wouldn't. They. I guess I ended. I don't know what the deal was, but I hunkered down with the M16 and went all the way up where it's at and made sure everything was okay. And then I think that's where one of those small medals, or they call them the accommodation medals. Mm-hmm. And then I ended up, I think, with 3 different ones. And then, like you said, on the Bronze Stars, that was basically like the December the 10th, that first body count, or what you want to call it. That was where I got that one. And then the second one was when the machine gun got blew up on payday, March 31st.
Right.
And then the other one, I forget what it was about. I think it was multiple stuff, kind of like. But that's
awesome. That's
yeah.
very
Then
cool.
then I ended up. Well, I got the Purple Heart also, but I know where I got it from.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Don, did you bring anything today?
Yeah.
I know you got a bag there. Yeah.
This is an intake pipe off the engine of my Cessna that I was shot down in. And if you can see right here, that's the bullet that shot me down.
Wow.
Huh.
That's
And the air intake on the engine is about 18 inches low. I'm sitting here, so figure 18 inches. 18 inches higher, I get the bullet right here.
oh wow.
That's how close it was.
All right.
Phew. Boy,
And-
that's something else.
Yeah, we've carried this around for a while.
Yeah.
And then
yeah, it's been
my flight helmet here was actually in the shop the day I got shot down.
So this isn't the one you were wearing during that
No, I
time
was
frame.
wearing the
Yeah.
company, your helmet's in the shop helmet.
Ah.
And we hit so hard, I don't know whether the strap on the helmet broke or the hasp broke, but when the plane came to the stop, the helmet was gone.
Oh.
Yeah,
we'd hit so
there's
hard.
a lot of pressure there on that.
And so my helmet was written off as being lost in the crash, and I didn't tell them otherwise. So I think the statute of limitations is off now.
So you end up with your actual helmet.
That was
from-
the actual
from
helmet I
Vietnam.
wore.
Yeah,
Wow,
buddy.
That is awesome. That's amazing. That is amazing. We talked a little bit earlier about kind of your transition back into the United States. You know, after going through all the experiences, and I know you probably got more stories to share that we haven't even delved into. But just with the ones that you shared, what was it like leaving that environment and coming back to the United States during a time that we're talking about Vietnam here, where you gentlemen didn't get the welcome you deserved?
No.
No. Do you mind sharing a little bit about what that experience was, everything that you went through in Vietnam and coming back to the United States? What was that experience like?
Go ahead, Paul.
Well, since you'd been over that long and been doing what you were doing, and everybody did their own, and everybody worked together, you had to do that.
Right.
And when you got home, it's like I said before, you just seemed like you were without. There was something missing, you know. And it was, and then plus, that was when all the trouble was going on with the riots and all that kind of stuff. And they told us when we come through San Diego, they said, look, if you can, put on regular clothes. He said, because I'm going to Georgia, you know, Atlanta, they said, when you get down there, somebody probably hit you with a tomato or an egg or something like that. And he said, they're doing it. And plus, that was when you didn't want to really say anything about the war or anything, because you figured somebody said, well, I don't want to hear that.
Right.
You're probably lying to me anyway, because you know what I mean? And that was kind of the feeling you got. And then as I got older, then got into the American Legion. In the VA, there's a lot of other people out there that went through the same thing I went through.
Right.
See, and we would respect each other, you know, as a group of people, good people.
Yeah. Well, it's embarrassing, for lack of a better term, but welcome home, right? Finally.
Appreciate it.
I know you both have welcome home pins and everything else, but
There's more of that going on now. Seems like even the young kids, even like going through the parade every day, even the little ones are saying thank you for your service.
Yep.
And
Awesome.
that makes you feel better that when you did what you did, it was not like putting me up on a totem pole and say, look at me,
Right.
we were there, you know, I'm being honest about it.
yeah, absolutely.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, and I think, again, why it's so important to share your living history, because so many people, when you got back, like you mentioned, didn't want to hear it.
Well, oh no,
And now,
that was one of the big things. People would just more or less shun you, or they would just tell you straight out, well, I really don't want to hear that.
Absolutely.
See?
And the biggest piece of healing is sharing.
Yeah,
You know, and
yeah.
giving that story to him. So I appreciate you sharing that. Don, what was it like?
Well, when I got home, I had a serious girlfriend when I went over. I know we dated when I was home on leave, but I remember nothing about it. And after the leave was over, I walked away like she was never part of my life. When I went to Fort Rucker as a flight instructor, I was in 2 serious plane crashes there, either one of which could have been fatal, and thank you again, Lord.
Amen.
And the one thing I remember also is the day after my second crash, I was at the BOQ, knock on the door, and one of my friends from my hometown was there. And he had just finished helicopter school. He was a first lieutenant. His name was Mike Thompson. And we reminisced for a while. He left, and 30 days later, he died in a helicopter crash.
Oh, wow.
And I lost, 3 really good friends in crashes or shot. I just wonder how many other relationships were destroyed by guys coming home and marriages.
Absolutely.
A lot of.
And that was the first time I realized, doing this was the first time I realized I had PTSD,
Right.
because I'd really never thought about it before. But
Right.
that
and it
year,
wasn't talked about.
that year is basically a blank, the year I came home. And before that, I've got good details. Just unbelievable.
Absolutely. Well, thank you, gentlemen, both again for sharing so much. If you had something, and I'm sure there's a lot, but if you had something that you wish civilians kind of would understand about your military time, what would it be?
It was probably the best times of my life, except for when I got married and had a family.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's the comradeship you develop is just unbelievable, because you've all got the same goal,
Right.
and you make some really good friends there.
Absolutely. And you kind of alluded to this, Paul, when you, once you left the military, you left all that camaraderie, and you get back to the civilian world, which don't really want anything to do with you during that time.
Yep.
Yeah.
And you look around, you don't have that same camaraderie. But you found that again through some of your partnerships with the American Legion,
Exactly.
the VFW.
That really
Yeah.
helped me more than anything, really. And then I kind of opened up too, because normally I wouldn't talk much as I did. It takes me a while to get going. I'm
Right.
like the little rabbit when the battery goes dead. You give me a new battery and I'm ready.
Right.
Or a six-pack.
That was one thing I wanted to say while I was here. There's got to be a bunch of Vietnam veterans in the area.
Yep.
Yeah, oh gosh, yes. I know a
And
lot of.
Paul and I are the only two at the Independence Legion. We need help because they've heard all our stories.
Yeah,
Well, and
they've heard them so many times. Instead of me telling them, I'm going to make a little recording and they can just push it in and listen.
there you go.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's a great segue to do a plug. We do run this Tactically Acquired podcast, and thanks to Campbell Media, we put some of our shows on TV as well. If you are a military veteran or an active duty military or a family member that wish to share their stories, please reach out to me, Rusty Martis, at NKU at veteransresource@nku.edu. We'd love to have an opportunity to share your living history as well. So enough with that shameless plug, but you set me up for that, so I had to take full advantage of it, right? If you had any advice for our current service members, what advice would you give them right now? They're going through, and you've already lived that life.
Yes.
What kind of advice would you give them as they serve right now our country?
Well, you could probably, some of the good points that we went through and then later what it would benefit us, because even you go through basic and stuff and you're taking all this rough stuff and you think you can't stand it, but there's a reason they're training you for a purpose that might be down the road. And you got to really you got to prepare yourself and be trained, take the training like it should be, not leave anything out. That little bit you leave out might be the part that'll get you in trouble.
Right, yeah, yeah. Don?
I would say there's so many schools available in the military now. Pick out something you enjoy doing. Volunteer for that school, even if it costs you a couple more years. But come out doing what you love to do.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. How do you feel, or how do you think that your military service time affected your life?
Oh,
Well, my father, like I said, was 29 years in the service and everything, and he was military. That like when he came home, the bed had to be made, everything had to be like it is, but there's a reason for that, see? But that's, you get into doing that, then you're doing everything kind of, in the proper way of doing stuff instead of just, leaving stuff be. But you learn a lot from stuff like that. Taking care of your neighbors, your family and everything, and do that, that's part of, that means a lot to you. Because like I said, when I was in Vietnam, everybody was my friend. I didn't care if they were Puerto Rico or wherever where they was at. They were all good people. We were just a big, group of good people.
Right.
See.
Working for a common goal and a mission.
Well, that was it. It's just like a football team. And you might have the best quarterback in the world, but if you don't have a team with it, you're no good. That's the same way with that military going out on a mission. Everybody's got to know their part, what to do, and do it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. Don?
Well, I would say when you get out, you want to do something you enjoy doing. Now, when I got out, it was working on a golf course for 2 years. Right. And that was the best therapy for me. Finally got my head straight. And then I ended up in a factory, got promoted to supervisor, and our life went on from there. But most of all, enjoy what you're doing, because life's too short.
Right.
Yeah, really.
Amen. Yeah.
And it catches up with you. A long time ago, they say, well, you're 40 years old, you're 30, and one day you're going to be in soon. I'm knocking on the door way up there now. I'm getting ready to retire.
Good, good. If you could go back, knowing everything that we talked about and all the experiences that you all went through, if you could go back before you put your boot on at boot camp to head out there, What advice would you give yourself?
Well, the day I got there, I learned a lot, real fast about certain things. Don't take your pocket knife with you, because I was raised in the country, and every kid, boy, had a pocket knife. Quick as I got there, everybody took their pocket knives and lay them down, and them sergeants would fight over them. And it's just things that you learn what you're getting into, but when you get there, they're your dad and mom is how they look at it. Right. They're in control over you. So if they say jump, you don't ask them how high, you just jump.
Let's go. So listen.
Yeah. All I can say is I know kids coming out of high school today, if you're not ready for college, look at the military.
Yeah.
There's so many opportunities there. We're not at war, and you can really do yourself a favor. And trust me, it'll make you grow up.
Yeah.
Because it did me.
Yeah. Well, like you said, Paul was 18 and you were just shy of 21. So, grew up in a hurry.
Like you said, we had to grow up fast.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we went from this to the extreme, and it hit just like bam, like that, real fast. That you then that you wasn't watching a movie. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, absolutely.
It was just one of those situations, but like you said, in a way, it might have been a good thing that it happened. I mean, it wasn't for the good for the people to have, but when it happened and I was there, it woke me up real fast. Called all the other people in those platoons, seen it. That was one thing we were getting into almost every time we went out. We would get into a booby trap. That was the biggest thing. And I remember one place we went up and there's a little knoll like that, and it was all growed up and stuff, and it looked, something about it just told me it just didn't look right. There was a sign up there said, GI stay out, booby trapped. Well, I can't remember who was the lieutenant or whoever it was, they wanted to go in there and check it out. Well, the one guy went up there, he tripped on one, and it blowed him, his legs, from here down, it was small. Well, his buddy runs up to help him, and it does the same thing to him. See, but when like I said, you think, well, they're not telling a story, but really they had that up there for a reason. See, a lot of times they would do that though to get you going a different direction.
Right.
See, is what it was all about. You had to think like these, but and then though them poor guys was in bad shape. But then they give them their morph thing. They just sitting down there laughing and carrying, having a big time waiting on the helicopter.
Wow.
It's sad though, really.
Yeah, when we talk about
especially somebody running up there to help,
Yeah, and have that second thought.
That was bad when it happened though in services. In wars forever, people would run up to try to help somebody, but that's being, doing your job.
I've got one.
Okay.
But I came in from my morning mission, parked the aircraft, and I'm looking, and there's two Vietnamese, and they've got surveying equipment, the transit and the whole 9 yards, and they're surveying our flight line. And I thought that was rather unusual. So I went into Captain Chancellor, and I said, Captain, you got two Vietnamese out here with surveying equipment on our flight line. He said, oh yeah, they've all been cleared. They're going to replace some of the PSP that's needing replacing. Well, about a week later, we come to the flight line. The first aircraft we see had been hit direct with a mortar, and all the other aircraft had shrapnel damage.
Yeah.
So they weren't surveyors, they were VC. That's how tricky they were.
Yep.
Just, I had one other one. I was told after my last mission, getting ready to go home, Captain Chancellor says, I'll be here at, I think it was 0600 in the morning. You've got a top secret mission to fly. Can't tell you what it is, but be here. Well, they pick me up. I show up, the aircraft is ready to go, and I meet an Army major. And he's from intelligence. And we get in the aircraft, and he hands me a map of where we're going, and it's got a big red rectangle. I said, this is interesting. He says, we're going to go witness a B-52 strike and make a bomb damage assessment. Okay.
All right. Yeah.
Well, I do the pre-flight of the aircraft, fire it up, and go to take off. And I call the tower and takeoff instructions. He says, "Sorry, Cat Killer, the airfield is closed." Well, we had a Marine helicopter squadron land during the night, and they parked all their aircraft on the runway. So I'm thinking, well, the ramp is big. And right about then, the sun's coming up, and if you've never seen a more beautiful sunrise in the world than coming up in Vietnam, because it's right on the ocean, and you've got the lower layer of clouds, and the sun is just the most brilliant oranges and reds, just beautiful. Well, the tower's looking at me, and I got the aircraft ready to go, and I says, "Hey, tower, isn't that a beautiful sunrise we got coming up?" Well, I knew he was going to turn around and look, and that's when I put the power to it, and I took off. Never heard anything about it after that, but had to get the job done.
There you go.
Buddy.
And the strike was awesome. I've got it on a slide, and it was unbelievable, the accuracy.
Wow.
And it was a beautiful morning. There wasn't a cloud in the sky. And during the strike, I'm looking up, and there's no aircraft there. They were bombing from 8 miles up, and the precision of it was just unbelievable.
Right.
Unbelievable. And that's before computers and all this good stuff.
Yeah, that is awesome. Well, gentlemen, I appreciate you tremendously taking the time to be here today and share some of your stories and be vulnerable and really sharing your living history with everyone. Is there any final thoughts or anything that I didn't ask that you'd like to share at this time?
I'm thankful to be here for one thing, and knowing that there is people like you and the American Legion that are interested in the people that's been in the situations and the VA and the American Legions and all of that. It's just a lot of, but like you said, you can associate with different people, and you can tell sometimes. Most of them, like me, I go to the American Legion and I feel at home.
Mm-hmm.
You know what
Yep,
I'm saying?
exactly.
But that's just when it is. If you go to different people and if they don't want to talk to you, which I know how to get around that. So, no, that's kind of one of my best thing, really.
Well, thank you. Don?
I was with the 220th Aviation Company, and there's been four books written about it, and they're really good reads. And each book, the same theme was there. We as pilots would do whatever it takes to protect the guys on the ground. And I'm talking married guys with children. There was no difference. They put their life on the line every day just like I did as a single guy, and I didn't have anything at home to worry about, and they did, but never slowed them down.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and this was kind of off camera, but you and your wife kind of shared a story about the reunion for the Marines that you helped save, and how they came up to you and just, even the spouses came up and just thanked you because they wouldn't have had their life without you. So
It was very, very emotional for me.
yeah, and for us as well. Again, thank you very much for sharing your stories here on Tactically Acquired. We want to gather the living histories, and you can always catch other previous shows on our website at nku.edu/veterans and click on the media tab in the Tactically Acquired podcast, or find them first on our Veteran Resource Station's Facebook page. A special thank you to Campbell Media for hosting us today. Thank you very much for that. And as always, we want to thank our military, veterans, and our families for your service to our country and for all our freedoms. Thank you. Thank you, gentlemen.
Appreciate it.
Thanks.